At last year's trade deadline, the Portland Trail Blazers made a move, shipping out Josh Hart to the New York Knicks for Cam Reddish, Ryan Arcidiacono, and a 2023 New York Knicks first-round pick. After that, the Knicks went on a run, winning a bunch of games, and that first-round pick ended up conveying. And now the Blazers have the 23rd overall pick in this year's NBA draft. They also have Cam Reddish, who's a bit of a reclamation project. Here was our reaction to getting Cam Reddish as a part of that trade. Me and Eric have been on the record as not the biggest Cam Reddish fans. There's a lot of people out there that believe in him. This will be a good case study, and it'll be interesting to see. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he ends up being the wing that the Blazers need, but haven't been the highest on him. He just hasn't panned out.
Cam just couldn't make it on the court on two different teams, so yeah. If it was just one team, I think I maybe agree with some of you that maybe it's a flyer. I just think when you have Nas, Sharp, those kind of guys on the team right now, Keon, I just didn't think we needed another flyer right now on someone that we hope gets better.
I don't want Cam. I don't know if I even want Cam Reddish in the rotation. Shout out to Fast Break Report. $5 donut says a future of Sharp and Reddish has the potential to be scary if done correctly. You should not include Reddish with Sharp. Reddish has been in the league for 4 years now and has never been good. He'll be good for a half occasionally, but he's basically, Eric, is he not a worse version of Nasir Little at this point?
Absolutely. And he's a free agent at the end of this year, so
free agent, inconsistent motor, like
they're probably not going to pay him unless he does good, and if he does good, we're going to overpay him. And then you're relying on someone who's been completely unreliable in his first 4 years to become reliable, and that's scary as well.
We traded one of our hardest playing dudes for a dude with an inconsistent motor who's about to be a free agent too.
Yeah.
Who shoots a worse 3-point percentage than Josh Hart, I think, so far this year.
If you're trying to tell us that Reddish is good and he's for sure good, or like he's like absolutely 100% a hidden gem and is going to bust out and stuff like that, I just think that's wishful thinking, and there's no way to justify that other than you're just hoping that someone who was a very high recruit coming out of high school and a big name, played at Duke and all that stuff, becomes what he was supposed to become. But with all that talent...
Who have we done that with, though? Who have we done that with? Nick Stauskas, Mario Hezonja, Thomas Robinson? Did any of those guys pan out? That's the thing, is like, hope Cam proves us wrong. I mean, we're definitely not wrong in the fact that he has not been good in his NBA career so far. What we could be wrong in is if he'll be good, which I don't have much faith in. That's where we could be wrong, absolutely. But to this point, there is no shadow of a doubt that he has not been good in his NBA career. He's been in 2 different stops. New York gave up a first for him and then was willing to trade him for nothing. That should say a lot to you, okay? Reddish what is Reddish good at? For all the people that love Cam Reddish, what is he good at? He's inefficient, shoots 30% from 3, doesn't pass, averages 1 assist per game in 22 minutes this year, 1.2 assists per game in 24 minutes for his career.
He had one,
doesn't rebound.
One good playoff game.
Eric, this year he's averaging 1.5 rebounds in 22 minutes as a small forward. Yes, let's play him with Jeremy Grant and see how that goes. That'll be fun. So I wasn't super high on Cam Reddish before he ever got traded to the Portland Trail Blazers. I viewed him as a guy who would show flashes of different things, but was never close to being consistent enough to get things done. With that being said, let's take a look at how he fared during his time in Portland as we take a look at his stats. Now, obviously, I didn't do a player preview video on him because he wasn't a Portland Trail Blazer, so there are no goals from before the season, but I will talk about my expectations for him going into his time as a Portland Trail Blazer, and then how he looked as a Blazer. These stats are in Cam Reddish's 20 games as a Blazer, in which he averaged 11 points, almost 3 rebounds, 2 assists, over a steal a game, and 1.5 turnovers in over 27 minutes. You can see the per 36 numbers right there. None of the numbers are super impressive. Now let's take a look at his efficiency numbers as he shot 44% from the field, which includes almost 57% from 2 and 32% from 3, which is right in line with his career averages. His free throw percentage was an impressive 83%. True shooting percentage was okay. It was slightly below average at 56.3%. Half of his shots were threes, and that free throw rate isn't too impressive. So he did knock down free throws, but he didn't get to the line too often. He barely shot more than 2 attempts per game. Now let's take a look at the positives. Cam Reddish was impressive scoring from 2. He was a solid finisher around the rim, shooting almost 67% from 0 to 3 feet, but he was really solid from 3 to 10 feet, shooting 51.5% from that range. He shot a decent percentage from 10 to 16 feet at 45.5, and this was why he was an overall efficient player from 2 for a wing at almost 57%. He has solid touch on floaters and little running layups. He doesn't have to get all the way to the rim in order to finish plays, and honestly, he doesn't really get to the rim at a super high rate. He shot 24% of his field goals from 0 to 3 feet and almost 19% of his field goals from 3 to 10 feet. So a lot of times Reddish is happy shooting the ball, a dribble before he gets to the rim, mixing up his timing and mixing up the way he shoots some floaters in order to get shots off around the rim. He's not the most athletic player, so he resorts to that instead of trying to rise up over defenders at the rim, and he's had some success doing it. The second positive is his free throw shooting. That 83% is impressive, and he's a good enough free throw shooter that I wouldn't mind seeing him try and get all the way to the rim a little bit more often to see if he could get more free throw attempts out of it, because that is a very efficient play for him. And then the third positive was some playmaking flashes. His 1.9 assists per game as a Portland Trailblazer would have been a career high for any season. Cam Reddish has not been known as a passer during his NBA career, but he showed some flashes of passing ability. Portland even experimented with him playing some point guard, and he did have an 8 assist, 1 turnover game against the Detroit Pistons, which the Blazers won on March 6th. However, these were just very brief flashes, as during the last 7 games of his season, Cam Reddish did not register a single assist in 6 of those. Now, it's not like he was playing with any world beaters as teammates. Obviously, the Blazers tanked the rest of the season, but to only get 2 assists in his final 156 minutes isn't that good. So it's some more of what he showed during his career in terms of some flashes of him being a playmaker, but it definitely was not consistent and definitely had some downsides. But before we get into the downsides, the final positive was his play in transition. I think Cam Reddish is a little bit better in an up-tempo offense and a lot better when he has space attacking the rim in transition. I think Reddish is better in the open court, in space, than he is in the half court, trying to make plays against a more loaded defense. He's always struggled dealing with rotating help side defenders, whether it's trying to finish around them or over them or making the right read in terms of a kick out pass. So transition play was good for him, and I think he was a lot better in an offense that was playing at a more up-tempo pace. Now let's take a look at his negatives. The first negative was Reddish's three-point shooting, which at 31.8% was a shade below his career three-point percentage of 32.3%. This has been the biggest problem with Cam Reddish, and his form is decently smooth. There's nothing glaringly wrong with it. He's just never been consistent shooting the 3 ball, and I think I figured out what it is. It seemed like when Reddish had time and space to shoot 3-point shots, he shot a decent percentage, but when he was sped up and when he had to get his shot off the dribble, he didn't shoot as well. He would still have an occasional impressive make off the dribble, off a step back or sidestep or whatever, but when he didn't have time to shoot 3-point shots, he shot a bad percentage on them. And unfortunately in the NBA, you're not going to have a ton of time to get off 3-point shots, and that's why I think he struggled during his career as a 3-point shooter. It seemed like he was off balance a lot of times and struggled getting his base consistently under him. I think his base might be a little bit too narrow. I think he could go with a wider base, and that would maybe give him a more stable shot. But Cam Reddish just is not a good 3-point shooter. At this point, the other guy traded with him, Matisse Thybulle, is a better 3-point shooter, and that's a problem for Cam Reddish. We'll talk about Matisse Thybulle in an upcoming player review, but Cam Reddish is not a shooter. He's just not a good 3-point shooter. I don't really understand the notion that a lot of people seem to have that he's a guy that can shoot the ball, because the percentages don't back that up. The eye test doesn't back that up. He's inconsistent. He'd have a good game here or there, but a good game does not make a good shooter, and he's not one. The second negative was his overall defense. I thought Cam Reddish really struggled in a Blazer uniform on the defensive side of the ball. I thought he fell asleep a ton off the ball, and on the ball, while he would have some good moments, he was inconsistent at best. At worst, you could say he was a bad on-ball defender. He's not somebody that you would trust to come in and make a difference for a struggling Portland Trail Blazers defense. Maybe if you had a bunch of good defenders around him, he wouldn't stick out and he could at least just guard lesser players, and he's somebody you could hide a little bit, and he's not going to make a ton of really bad mistakes, but he was not a positive on that end in the Blazer uniform, and he hasn't been a consistent defender during his NBA career. He's had some flashes that have gotten people to buy into him as a defensive player, but they've been far from consistent. The third negative is his rebounding. Cam Reddish, for a small forward, is a subpar rebounder. He averaged only 3.7 rebounds per 36 minutes last year, which obviously is not good. The fourth negative was his play versus physicality. I think this Trailblazers team lacks in physicality. They have a lot of players that struggle going against physicality, and in the playoffs, physicality wins out. If you're not able to play against physicality in the playoffs, you end up struggling. Cam Reddish struggles with physicality in the regular season, and that's a problem for me with him as a player. When Reddish attacks defenders that are able to be physical against him without fouling, he tends to struggle, he tends to cough up the ball, he tends to have silly turnovers against physical defense, and when there's contact on his finishes in the paint, that's when he misses shots at the rim. He's not good finishing through contact. That's one of the reasons why I think he's better in transition, where you usually won't have help side defense loaded up to protect the rim. And then defensively, I think he lacks in strength, he lacks in physicality against some more physical wings and especially bigger players. I thought Cam Reddish was no match for players like that. So I think Reddish needs to get a little bit stronger in order to withstand NBA level physicality. And then the fifth and final negative is his role. I'm not really sure what Cam Reddish's role is on a winning team, because he's not somebody that plays well off the ball due to his lack of a three-point shot. He's not somebody with a clear-cut positive on the defensive side of the ball, so it's not like he's a defensive stopper or a guy that it's easy to figure out how to play him on the defensive end. He's not somebody that's going to provide much in terms of rebounding or consistent playmaking. I just don't really know what his role is on a good team. He's a guy that occasionally can do something in pretty much any area, but none of it is consistent, and none of it is something that you can rely on a game in, game out basis. And obviously on a good team, he's not good enough with the ball in his hands to justify just putting the ball in his hands constantly. Off the ball is a problem. I don't know what to make of Cam Reddish as a role player, because he's just struggled to find a role during his NBA career. The future of Cam Reddish is this: restricted free agency. He's going to be a restricted free agent this offseason, along with Matisse Thybulle, and I think it's likely that the Blazers bring back one of those two players, and obviously who gets offered what in restricted free agency is going to determine who comes back. At this point, I would move on from Cam Reddish. I don't think he possesses enough upside to even deserve a roster spot on this team. I don't think he does enough right now to deserve a roster spot on this team. He was no better in Portland than he was in previous stops. His shooting was about the same. His defense was about the same, if not worse. His rebounding was about the same. I don't really know how Cam Reddish was any better in a Blazer uniform than he was in his previous stops, where he fell out of rotations. I just don't really see a path to a meaningful role for Cam Reddish on this Blazer team that is going to try and win next year. So I would honestly move on from Cam Reddish. The Blazers got the first round pick for Josh Hart. That was the asset they valued. Cam Reddish was a throw in a reclamation project. They gave him an opportunity for 20 or so games, and he didn't really make the most of it. My grade for Cam Reddish is a C. Cam Reddish was exactly what I expected in a Blazer uniform. So a C is the perfect grade for somebody who gave me what I expected, and what I expected was mediocrity. Listen, I am not trying to pick on the guy. I would love for Cam Reddish to work out as a Portland Trailblazer. I would love for Cam Reddish to turn into a star player for the Portland Trailblazers. He seems like a genuinely solid dude that maybe in the right situation could turn into something solid, but I'm not sure Portland is the right situation for that. They're not really in position to gamble on reclamation projects that have struggled like Cam Reddish has. And honestly, it's up to Cam Reddish in terms of what he becomes as an NBA player. If he can become a good shooter, then I could see him having a little bit of a role. if he could become a little bit stronger, it might be a little bit easier for him to be a more versatile defender, defending some bigger players while also being able to withstand physicality on a lot of his drives to the basket. So if he truly has the work ethic, then I would expect these things to improve in the future and maybe for him to earn a role on an NBA team. He's just not there right now and hasn't been there during his 4-year career. So we'll see what happens with him. And with that being said, that's a wrap for this video. Let me know what you think of Cam Reddish down in the comment section below. Do you want to bring him back this offseason? If so, what would you feel comfortable paying him? I'm interested to see what you guys have to say after this 20-game experiment of Cam Reddish in a Portland Trail Blazer uniform. So with that, that's a wrap. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave a like on this video. It helps me out. I would greatly appreciate it if you do that. And also, if you want to check out previous player reviews, there's a playlist linked in the description box below. With that being said, I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.